the 14th century mystic and poet Lala said, "I have traveled so far seeking God. But it was only when I gave up and turned back that I found him present inside me. I have traveled so far seeking God. But when I gave up and turned back, there he was within me." I, the finite mind, have searched so far and for so long in objects, substances, activities, expanded states of mind, and intimate relationships for peace and fulfillment. And although the acquisition of any of these brought my search temporarily to an end, and as a result gave me a brief taste of the peace and fulfillment for which I longed, the peace and fulfillment never lasted. It was only when I gave up and turned back, it was only when I ceased seeking in objective experience for peace and fulfillment. It was only when I gave up and turned back, when I faced the source from which I have risen. It is only when I allowed myself to sink deeper and deeper into the heart of awareness from which I have risen, that I began to taste the lasting peace and fulfillment for which I have longed all my life. I have traveled so far in search of God, But when I gave up and turned back, there he was within me. This giving up and turning back or turning around of the mind is what is referred to as self-inquiry, self-investigation, or self-abidance. It is also known as self-resting or self-remembering. It is also sometimes called self-surrendering, or the surrender of the mind to God's infinite being. In other words, this turning back of the mind is the place where the path of knowledge and the path of love or devotion meet. It is the experience in which self-investigation and self-surrender are understood to be one and the same. It is the culmination of the two paths of jnana yoga and bhakti yoga. The path of knowledge and the path of love. If consciousness could be likened to an ocean, mind would be the waves that rise upon and the currents that appear within that ocean. At the depth of the ocean, there is complete stillness. The further one rises to the surface of the ocean, the more movement there is. So our thoughts are the waves that take place on the surface of the ocean. Our feelings are the currents that take place within the ocean. But all there is to mind, that is, all there is to thoughts and feelings, is the activity of the ocean. Just as the waves and currents are simply the ocean in motion, so mind is simply the motion or the activity of consciousness. So all the mind has to do to find the peace that it longs for is to sink into the depths of the ocean. It is always still in the depths of the ocean. So all the mind that longs for peace and fulfillment needs to do is to sink into the depths of awareness. As Rumi said, flow down and down and down in ever widening rings of being. As the wave flows down and down and down into the depths of the ocean, it widens or loses its limitations, loses its activity, and at some point is revealed as perfectly silent, still awareness. Having no activity or no motion, it has no form. And having no form, it has no limits. Thus, at the very depth of the mind, the very substance out of which the mind is made, is this silent, unlimited or infinite awareness. All the currents that take place in the ocean and all the waves that take place on the ocean are simply this silent, infinite awareness. Vibrating within itself. appearing as our thoughts and feelings. If we make a deep and honest investigation into what our thoughts and feelings really want, we will almost always find that what they are seeking is simply peace and fulfillment. The wave cannot find peace and fulfillment in another wave. The only place to find lasting peace and fulfillment is to sink into the depths of itself, and in doing so progressively lose its agitation. The feelings of boredom, resistance, restlessness, loneliness, longing, are simply currents in the ocean, saying, I don't like the water that is present here. If I go to a different part of the ocean, the water might be better over there. This is what Lala meant when she said, I have searched so far for God. I have traveled so far in search of God. But when I gave up and turned back, there he was, within me. When the current gives up and turns back or sinks down into the depths of the ocean, of which it is itself simply a modulation, right there it finds the peace for which it was in search.